A monarchy is a form of government in which a group, usually a family called the dynasty, embodies the country's national identity, and one of its members, called the monarch, exercises a role of sovereignty. The actual power of the monarch may vary from purely symbolical to partial and restricted to completely despotic. Traditionally, and in most cases, the monarch's post is inherited and lasts until death or abdication. But there are also elective monarchies where the monarch is elected. Each of these has variations. In some elected monarchies, only those of certain pedigrees are eligible, whereas many hereditary monarchies impose requirements regarding the religion, age, gender, mental capacity, and other factors. Occasionally this might create a situation of rival claimants whose legitimacy is subject to effective election. Finally, there have been cases where the term of a monarch's reign is either fixed in years or continues until certain goals are achieved, an invasion being repulsed, for instance. Thus, there are widely divergent structures and traditions defining monarchy. Monarchy was the most common form of government until the 19th century, but it is no longer prevalent. Where it exists, it is now usually a constitutional monarchy, in which the monarch retains a unique legal and ceremonial role, but exercises limited or no official political power. Under the written or unwritten constitution, others have governing authority. Currently, 44 sovereign nations in the world have monarchs acting as heads of state, 16 of which are Commonwealth realms that recognize Queen Elizabeth II as the head of state. All European monarchies are constitutional ones, with the exception of the Vatican City, which is an elective monarchy, but sovereigns in the smaller states exercise greater political influence than in the larger. The monarchs of Cambodia, Japan, and Malaysia reign, but do not rule, although there is considerable variation in the degree of authority they wield. Although they reign under constitutions, the monarchs of Brunei, Morocco, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia and Swaziland appear to continue to exercise more political influence than any other single source of authority in the nations, either by constitutional mandate or by tradition. Etymology. The word monarch comes from the Greek language word mu-o-micron nu alpha rho iota sigma monarchos, which referred to a single, at least nominally, absolute ruler. In current usage, the word monarchy usually refers to a traditional system of hereditary rule, as elective monarchies are rare nowadays. History. Tribal kingship is often connected to sacral functions, so that the king acts as a priest, or is considered of divine ancestry. The sacral function of kingship was transformed into the notion of divine right of kings in the Christian Middle Ages, while the Chinese, Japanese and Nepalese monarchs continued to be considered living gods into the modern period. Since antiquity, monarchy has contrasted with forms of democracy, where executive power is wielded by assemblies of free citizens. In antiquity, monarchies were abolished in favor of such assemblies in Rome and Athens. In Germanic antiquity, kingship was primarily a sacral function, and the king was either directly hereditary for some tribes, while for others he was elected from among eligible members of royal families by the Thing. Such ancient parliamentarism declined during the European Middle Ages, but it survived in forms of regional assemblies, such as the Icelandic Commonwealth, the Swiss Landsgemeinde and later Tagsatzung, and the high medieval communal movement linked to the rise of medieval town privileges. The modern resurgence of parliamentarism and anti-monarchism began with the temporary overthrow of the English monarchy by the Parliament of England in 1649, followed by the American Revolution of 1776 and the French Revolution of 1792. One of many opponents of that trend was Elizabeth d'Orban, whose anonymous dialogue between Clara Neville and Louisa Mills on loyalty features Silly Louisa, who admires liberty, Tom Paine and the USA, lectured by Clara on God's approval of monarchy, and on the influence women can exert on men. Much of 19th-century politics was characterized by the division between anti-monarchist radicalism and monarchist conservatism. Many countries abolished the monarchy in the 20th century and became republics, especially in the wake of either World War I or World War II. Advocacy of republics is called republicanism, while advocacy of monarchies is called monarchism. Characteristics and role. Monarchies are associated with political or socio-cultural hereditary rule, in which monarchs rule for life and pass the responsibilities and power of the position to the child or another member of the family when they die. Most monarchs, both historically and in the modern day, have been born and brought up within a royal family, the center of the royal household and court. Growing up in a royal family, future monarchs are often trained for the responsibilities of expected future rule. Different systems of succession have been used, such as proximity of blood, primogeniture, and agnatic seniority. While most monarchs have been male, many female monarchs also have reigned in history. The term queen regnant refers to a ruling monarch, while a queen consort refers to the wife of a reigning king. Rule may be hereditary in practice without being considered a monarchy, such as that of family dictatorships or political families in many democracies. The principal advantage of hereditary monarchy is the immediate continuity of leadership. Some monarchies are non-hereditary. In an elective monarchy, monarchs are elected, or appointed by somebody for life or a defined period, but otherwise serve as any other monarch. 3 elective monarchies exist today. Malaysia and the United Arab Emirates are 20th-century creations, while one is ancient. A self-proclaimed monarchy is established when a person claims the monarchy without any historical ties to a previous dynasty. Napoleon I of France declared himself Emperor of the French and ruled the First French Empire after previously calling himself First Consul. Following his seizure of power in the coup of 18 Brumaire, Jean-Bédel Bokassa of the Central African Republic declared himself Emperor of the Central African Empire. Yuan Shikai crowned himself Emperor of the short-lived Empire of China a few years after the Republic of China was founded. Powers of the monarch today. The extent of the monarch's powers varies. In an absolute monarchy, the monarch rules as an autocrat, with absolute power over the state and government. For example, the right to rule by decree, promulgate laws, and impose punishments. Absolute monarchies are not necessarily authoritarian. The enlightened absolutists of the Age of Enlightenment were monarchs who allowed various freedoms. In a constitutional monarchy, the monarch is subject to a constitution. The monarch serves as a ceremonial figurehead, symbol of national unity and state continuity. The monarch is nominally sovereign, but the electorate, through the legislature, exercise political sovereignty. Constitutional monarchs have limited political power, except in Japan and Sweden, where the constitutions grant no power to the monarchs. Typical monarchical powers include granting pardons, granting honors, and reserve powers, e.g., to dismiss the Prime Minister, refuse to dissolve Parliament, or veto legislation. They often also have privileges of inviolability, sovereign immunity, and an official residence. A monarch's powers and influence may depend on tradition, precedent, popular opinion, and law. In other cases, the monarch's power is limited, not due to constitutional restraints, but to effective military rule. In the late Roman Empire, the Praetorian Guard several times deposed Roman emperors and installed new emperors. The The Hellenistic kings of Macedon and of Epirus were elected by the army, which was similar in composition to the ecclesia of democracies, the council of all free citizens. Military service was often linked with citizenship among the male members of the royal house. Military domination of the monarch has occurred in modern Thailand and in medieval Japan. In Fascist Italy, the Savoy monarchy under King Victor Emmanuel III coexisted with the fascist single-party rule of Benito Mussolini. Romania under the Iron Garden, Greece during the first months of the colonel's regime were much the same way. Spain under Francisco Franco was officially a monarchy, although there was no monarch on the throne. Upon his death, Franco was succeeded as head of state by the Bourbon heir Juan Carlos I, who proceeded to make Spain a democracy with himself as a figurehead constitutional monarch. Person of monarch. Most states only have a single person acting as monarch at any given time. Although two monarchs have ruled simultaneously in some countries, a situation known as diarchy. Historically, this was the case in the ancient Greek city-state of Sparta or 17th-century Russia, and there are examples of joint sovereignty of spouses or relatives. Other examples of joint sovereignty include Tsars Peter I and Ivan V of Russia, and Charles V, Holy Roman Emperor, and Joanna of Castile of the Crown of Castile. Andorra currently is the world's sole constitutional diarchy, a co-principality, located in the Pyrenees between Spain and France. It has two co-princes, the Bishop of Urgell in Spain and the President of France. It is the only situation in which an independent country's monarch is democratically elected by the citizens of another country. In a personal union, separate, independent states share the same person as monarch, but each realm has its own crown or monarchy. The 16 separate Commonwealth realms are sometimes described as being in a personal union with Queen Elizabeth II as monarch. However, they can also be described as being in a shared monarchy. A regent may rule when the monarch is a minor, absent, or debilitated. A pretender is a claimant to an abolished throne or to a throne already occupied by somebody else. Abdication is when a monarch resigns. Monarchs often take part in certain ceremonies, such as the coronation. Role of monarch. Monarchy, especially absolute monarchy, sometimes is linked to religious aspects. Many monarchs once claimed the right to rule by the will of a deity, a special connection to a deity, or even purported to be divine kings, or incarnations of deities themselves. Many European monarchs have been styled fide defensor. Some hold official positions relating to the state religion or established church. In the Western political tradition, a morally based, balanced monarchy is stressed as the ideal form of government, and little reverence is paid to modern-day ideals of egalitarian democracy. E.g., St. Thomas Aquinas unapologetically declares, tyranny is wont to occur not less but more frequently on the basis of polyarchy than on the basis of monarchy. However, Thomas Aquinas also stated that the ideal monarchical system would also have at lower levels of government both an aristocracy and elements of democracy in order to create a balance of power. The monarch would also be subject to both natural and divine law as well, and also be subject to the church in matters of religion. In Dante Alighieri's De Monarchia, a spiritualized, imperial Catholic monarchy is strongly promoted according to a Ghibelline worldview in which the royal religion of Melchizedek is emphasized, against the sacerdotal claims of the rival papal ideology. In Saudi Arabia, the king is a head of state who is both the absolute monarch of the country and the custodian of the two holy mosques of Islam. Titles of monarchs. Monarchs can have various titles. Common European titles of monarchs are emperor or empress, king or queen, grand duke or duchess, prince or princess, duke or duchess. Some early modern European titles included elector, margrave, and burgrave. Lesser titles include count, princely count, or imam. Slavic titles include knyaz and Tsaritsa, a word derived from the Roman imperial title Caesar. In non-Europe, monarchs can have various titles too. Muslim world's titles of monarchs include caliph, padishah, sultan or sultana, shahanshah, shah, malik or malika, emir or amira, sheikh or sheikha. East Asian titles of monarchs include Wangdi, Tianzi, Tenoa, Hosea Teno, Oang or Yowang, Hoangja or Yowam. South Asian and Southeast Asian titles included Maharaja or Mahirani, Raja and Rana Rani in Ratu. Historically, Mongolic or Turkic monarchs have used the title Khan and Khagan or Khatun and Khanum, and ancient Egypt monarchs have used the title Pharaoh for men and women. In Ethiopian Empire, monarchs use title Negus or Nagast or Negastar Nagast. Many monarchs are addressed with particular styles or manners of address, such as Majesty, Royal Highness, by the grace of God, Amir al-Mu'minin, Hunkar Khanate Nayala Osman, Sovereign of the Sublime House of Osman, Jang Maha Mulia Seripadakabaganda, Jana, Teno Haikard Bixia. Sometimes titles are used to express claims to territories that are not held in fact, or titles not recognized. Also, after a monarchy is deposed, often former monarchs and the descendants are given titles. Dependent monarchies. In some cases monarchs are dependent on other powers. In the British colonial era, indirect rule under a paramount power existed, such as the princely states under the British Raj. In Botswana, South Africa, Ghana and Uganda, the ancient kingdoms and chiefdoms that were met by the colonialists when they first arrived on the continent are now constitutionally protected as regional and or sectional entities. Furthermore, in Nigeria, though the dozens of sub-regional polities that exist there are not provided for in the current constitution, they are nevertheless legally recognized aspects of the structure of governance that operates in the nation. In addition to these 5 countries, peculiar monarchies of varied sizes and complexities exist in various other parts of Africa. Succession. The rules for selection of monarchs varies from country to country. In constitutional monarchies, the rule of succession is generally embodied in a law passed by a representative body, such as the parliament. Hereditary monarchies. In a hereditary monarchy, the position of monarch is inherited according to a statutory or customary order of succession, usually within one royal family tracing its origin through a historical dynasty or bloodline. This usually means that the heir to the throne is known well in advance of becoming monarch to ensure a smooth succession. Primogeniture, in which the eldest child of the monarch is first in line to become monarch, is the most common system in hereditary monarchy. The order of succession is usually affected by rules on gender. Historically, agnatic primogeniture or patrilineal primogeniture was favored, that is, inheritance according to seniority of birth among the sons of a monarch or head of family, with sons and the male issue inheriting before brothers and their issue, and male line males inheriting before females of the male line. This is the same as semi-salic primogeniture. Complete exclusion of females from dynastic succession is commonly referred to as application of the Salic law. Before primogeniture was enshrined in European law and tradition, kings would often secure the succession by having the successor crowned during their own lifetime. So for a time there would be 2 kings in co-regency, a senior king and a junior king. Examples include Henry the Young, King of England, and the early direct Capetians in France. Sometimes, however, primogeniture could operate through the female line. In some systems a female may rule as monarch only when the male line dating back to a common ancestor is exhausted. In 1980, Sweden became the first European monarchy to declare equal primogeniture, meaning that the eldest child of the monarch, whether female or male, ascends to the throne. Other kingdoms have since followed suit. The United Kingdom adopted absolute primogeniture on April 25, 2013, following agreement by the Prime Ministers of the 16 Commonwealth realms at the 22nd Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting. Sometimes religion is affected. For example, the British monarch, as head of the Church of England, is required to be in communion with the Church, although all other former rules forbidding marriage to non-Protestants were abolished when equal primogeniture was adopted in 2013. In the case of the absence of children, the next most senior member of the collateral line becomes monarch. In complex cases, this can mean that there are closer blood relatives to the deceased monarch than the next in line according to primogeniture. This has often led, especially in Europe in the Middle Ages, to conflict between the principle of primogeniture and the principle of proximity of blood. Other hereditary systems of succession included dynasty, which is semi-elective and gives weight to merit and agnatic seniority. In some monarchies, such as Saudi Arabia, succession to the throne usually first passes to the monarch's next eldest brother, and only after that to the monarch's children. Elective monarchies. In an elective monarchy, monarchs are elected or appointed by somebody for life or a defined period, but otherwise serve as any other monarch. There is no popular vote involved in elective monarchies, as the elective body usually consists of a small number of eligible people. Historical examples of elective monarchy include the Holy Roman Emperors, and the free election of kings of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. For example, Pepin the Short was elected king of the Franks by an assembly of Frankish leading men. Stanislaw August Poniatowski of Poland was an elected king, as was Frederick I of Denmark. Germanic peoples had elective monarchies. 4 forms of elective monarchies exist today. The Pope of the Roman Catholic Church is elected to a life term by the College of Cardinals. In Malaysia, the federal king, called the Yang di-Pertuan Agong, is elected for a 5-year term from and by the hereditary rulers of 9 of the Federation's constitutive states, all on the Malay Peninsula. The United Arab Emirates also has a procedure for electing its monarch. Furthermore, Andorra has a unique constitutional arrangement as one of its heads of state is the President of the French Republic in the form of a co-prince. This is the only instance in the world where the monarch of a state is elected by the citizens of a different country. Appointment by the current monarch is another system, used in Jordan. It also was used in Imperial Russia, however, it was changed to semi-Salic soon, because the unreliable realization of the appointment system resulted in an age of palace revolutions. In this system, the monarch chooses the successor, who is always his relative.